Jake Tuura, welcome to the Pacey Performance Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
I've never joined a podcast and felt so inferior in terms of my coolness. I'll be honest. So much cooler than me.
Yeah, the hair. I got to keep the long hair.
Yeah, 100%. Keep it. No, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it, and sorry for keeping you waiting. But yeah, thank you for jumping on. So we're going to dive into tendons. People love tendons. So before we do that, can you give us a bit of a bio on you? I'm interested to know a bit more about you.
Yeah. Okay. So I was a strength coach, college in the States, college strength coach for maybe a decade. I was the first place I started out. I just did it because I wasn't a good athlete. I got bigger, stronger, faster with lifting weights. And then I'm like, I don't like anything else in college. 2 years into college, I didn't know what I was doing. I'm like, I'm just going to do exercise science. And then I'm going to be a strength coach. So it's like I got to get my undergrad, my master's, intern, get a job wherever I can. So yeah, it was a process of like going back to my high school, training kids, then Division III, Division II, Division I. And I kind of just got tired of performance. It just seems like such a new field, and we're just repeating the same old thing. And it was a challenge for me to understand what to do. But then I just got to the point where I'm like, it's really just preference of the strength coach of what you're doing. And I don't like being in that world. I want something more concrete and maybe scientific. And that's kind of maybe where I got into tendons. So like I gave up on strength and conditioning after the decade. And that was in 2020, around the same time too that I started looking into tendons. So I had posted, ever since I started my Instagram, I always posted a ton of stuff. It's more like a diary for me. And I posted something from Cal Dietz about the tendon and the muscle. And it was an old video saying when you lift weights, the muscle gets stiffer. And then when you do plyos, the tendon gets stiffer. He might not have used the term stiffer. He might have used stronger. But then he was talking about the injuries, like a powerlifter would get a tendon injury and an athlete would get a muscle injury. And I was like, wow, that's interesting, because at the time I had dealt with patellar tendinopathy, jumper's knee, for many years. And I'm a basketball player, wanted to dunk basketballs. And I just couldn't do it for many years because of my jumper's knee. And I didn't know. I just rested. I thought performance, lifting, and tendons, like tendons were just mysterious. There was nothing I had ever seen on them. Kind of until that Cal Dietz video. And then one of my friends, Kyle Dar, sent me a video, and he's like, yeah, that's okay, but look at this. It was a Keith Barr lecture. And I watched that thing so many times. He was talking about stress relaxation and tendon creep, stiffness of tendons. And I'm like, this is crazy. And then that led me into Jill Cook. I had a podcast that I had started, so I got these people on. And then I just started throwing up a ton of stuff on tendons during COVID on Instagram. And I got so much feedback from everyone because it was like things they had never seen. People in the basketball world or strength world, hypertrophy world, seeing stuff on tendons. And it's like, I didn't know there was science on tendons. I didn't know that. They didn't know that. So it just became this, I guess, this feedback loop of like, I'm going to research tendons. I'm going to post about tendons. People are going to tell me this is cool, and I'm just going to keep doing it. So now it's been 5 years of doing that. Yeah, I wrote a jumper's knee science foundation initially. Then I wrote a jumper's knee training program. And now, yeah, for the last 3 years, I haven't released really anything on tendons because I've been going way too deep. And I'm just so confused all the time. So that's kind of me. I mean, I have the performance background. I know what it's like how to take people bigger, stronger, faster. And now it's like, I'm finding the mix between that and tendon rehab and tendon performance.
Told you, people bloody love tendons. But so in terms of like business for you, are you coaching? Are you doing stuff online?
It's just all online right now. Like
okay.
I guess I've done a private gig for a bit with one of my buddies, and I just felt like I was in a prison, being in a gym, having to show up in the gym for a certain set of hours of the day. I just can't stand it right now. So it has its own negatives when you're just online. You don't have a community you can go to, and it can you can isolate, and there's a lot of negatives to that. But I've picked a world that I'm kind of on my own. I can't just hit up some of my past strength coach friends and be like, let's talk tendons, because that can happen. And then if I talk to tendon people, they're also not the performance people that want to go dunk basketballs. And so it's like, it's a weird world, but yeah, it's all online. So like, I've sell these training PDFs, I guess some education, and then I do phone consults with people, to like troubleshoot their tendon issues. And that's it for now. And I'm working on a bigger tendon thing that I don't know when it's going to get done, but it will at some point.
Exciting. I love it. Right, let's dive in. One question, and we'll go off piste here plenty of times. I've absolutely no doubt, which is absolutely fine. But to bring it back to the kind of simple for maybe you, but like you say, it's if you're getting confused about this kind of information around tendons, imagine what mire people are in when it comes to this who are kind of not like you. So the role of tendons in dynamic movements. Give us a bit of an overview.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we all there's so much education on muscles. Like muscles are going to help you move your skeleton, your bony skeleton, which is everything, moving your skeleton in space or stopping it from moving. And muscles just have so much control. They can eccentric, isometric, concentric contraction. But the thing is, all of the muscle actions have to go through the tendon to the bone. And then, like, think when you're doing just a vertical jump, is like your muscle is going to be pulling on the bone, but it has to go through the tendon. And then when you land from the jump, I kind of look at the opposite of like the bone is in a position when your foot hits the ground. The bone needs to stop moving. Let's just say like your femur needs to stop going forward, and it's starting in your bone, and then it's going to the tendon, and then the muscle is dissipating the energy. So I think it's like an opposite thing, where when you're producing, the muscle's pulling on tendon on bone, and when you're trying to, I mean, you're always producing force, you're not absorbing force, but when you're trying to stop, I think it's more like bone, tendon, muscle. So I look at what is the role of tendons in dynamic movement. It's really just the middleman between the I guess the scaffolding is the bones that you're moving, and then the real machinery that's doing the effort is the muscle, and the tendon is this thing between that it can store energy, it can release energy, it can temporarily hold energy so like the landing can be really stressful eccentrically on a muscle. We don't want quick eccentric contraction of a muscle is damaging. So when you land from something, when you're trying to stop, the tendon can hold that energy a little bit and then feed it to the muscle a little bit slower. So it's like the tendon is this middleman that does a lot of things, and it really doesn't have this central nervous system control like a muscle does. It doesn't have the complex eccentric, isometric, concentric contractions of a muscle. It's just like this stupid piece of connective tissue, and it does a lot of things. It's just so passive. It passively does all these things. It's just built in to be like a spring, a stiff spring, something that's compliant, have elasticity, all of these properties it has, and it's just like a passive. It has these passive properties, and it just gets beat up. It gets beat up because. Yeah, it gets beat up. I don't know why it gets beat up. It's just everything that you do that's quick demands so much of the tendon. And once it gets beat up and you start to get like soreness of the tendon, it can be there for many months, potentially many years. And hope that answers the question. It goes in many different ways, but that's kind of it. Muscles are the machinery, the bones are the scaffolding, and the middle guy is the tendon.
Of course. You mentioned stiffness a couple of times there. I know this is probably something that causes a bit of debate, certainly. Because I think stiffness is something that people hear and chase and continually chase. But my next question would be, how stiff is stiff enough, and how do we rein that obsession in because of what could potentially happen if you keep chasing and chasing and chasing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the term tendon stiffness, stiffness can have a negative connotation if your tendon is painful and stiff, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a material that when pulled on, it doesn't extend too much. So that would be a stiffer tendon. If you do a vertical jump, a standing vertical jump, and your patellar tendon extends 20% of its original length, let's say that's subject A. If you did the same exact thing with subject B and the tendon only extended 10%, that would be a stiffer tendon in subject B because it doesn't stretch as far when it's pulled on. So usually we're after tendon stiffness. I think because a lot of the issues with tendinopathies, or when you start to break down tendons, is they're extending. They're not capable of not extending too far. So like you're landing from a jump and the tendon muscle interaction is kind of bad, so the tendon just gets yanked on a little bit excessively, and then maybe that's hitting the cells. The cells know we're getting pulled on too far. They kick out nasty chemicals, and you experience pain symptoms. Or something like rupture, the tendon is getting pulled on too far and it snaps because it can only pull so far. So stiffness is something you always chase because it's like a safety mechanism. If you have a stiffer tendon, it's able to withstand more forces coming from the muscle, or more impact forces from the ground. So stiffness, yes, we're always kind of after stiffness, because if you can have a stiff tendon, it's probably more of a protected tendon, and you probably have better performance, because if your muscle has an output where it can pull a certain amount, give it many years of training, and now your muscle can pull even harder to produce more outputs with like a vertical jump or a sprint, that muscle's increased outputs need to be met with a stiffer tendon. If the tendon doesn't get any stiffer and you're pulling with the muscle pull is bigger, you're probably just going to be yanking more on the tendon. And I think if you yank too much on the tendon, that's probably where this micro damage, these micro ruptures, or full rupture could occur. I think that's what's going on with tendon stiffness. So we're always kind of after tendon stiffness. It's a good quality. When it gets to like how stiff is stiff enough, can you get too stiff? I don't know if that's a thing. I feel like that is not a thing. Can the tendon get too stiff? And also, we're kind of just guessing, because who is actually testing tendon stiffness? You have to do a contraction. You have to get an ultrasound probe on the tendon. You have to see how far it's extending. It's just not practical. Not a lot of people are doing this. But that idea that if it's stiffer, it's not going to extend as much, which is healthier, which is more protective of the tendon, I think that's the idea people have to have. So you do want your Achilles tendon, your patellar tendon, you do want them to be stiffer. The other tendons, you want them to be stiffer too. I don't think you can reach a point where they get too stiff and it's a bad thing. And I'd say that because if you're doing your sport, your body just self-corrects. Your body is just going to figure it out and be like, this is the optimal amount of stiffness that I want. That's kind of where I'm at with the stiffness talk.
Sorry, Jen, does that stiffness have any impact on the muscle? Getting stiffer and stiffer?
So like I guess Keith Barr proposed this idea many years ago that if the tendon is too stiff, it's going to be risk of muscle injury, because I don't know where I stand with that. It also gets complex. There's one area that is never really addressed, talked about. I've tried to find research on it because I find it the aponeurosis, where it's like the tendon within the muscle. If you look at like the soleus muscle, you get soleus strains. Look at anatomy photos of variations of the soleus, and there's tons of aponeurosis within the tendon and tons of variations within that. So it's like, can you make it as simple as saying if the Achilles tendon is too stiff, you're gonna risk a muscle injury? I don't think so. And a lot of the muscle injuries we care about are the soleus. When we go to like the Achilles and the lower leg, the soleus injury is like one of the biggest muscle injuries, and it's so complex. I don't think you can say it as simply as that. I would more think the tendon stiffness potentially if you have like a person that's prone for muscle injuries, is it because the tendon is too stiff, or is it just like a bad training program that's causing some muscle injuries? Is it just bad progressions or regressions? Is it too much volume? Is it too much too soon? That's where I would go first. This talk of the tendon is too stiff and that's why the muscle's getting hurt, that would be case by case. And also, if you did have a case like that, you better be testing tendon stiffness to make sure that's the one variable that's the differentiator. I don't enjoy that discussion that too stiff of a tendon is going to be bad for the muscle. I think it doesn't make any sense. The tendon stiffness is like it takes so long to develop tendon stiffness versus muscle strength. The muscle can get strong fairly quickly. The tendon is going to be a lagging thing. You're not going to get tendons. You're not going to do a training program like a plyometric program and get a crazy gain in tendon stiffness in 8 weeks without having a change in muscle stiffness in those 8 weeks. The muscle's going to happen probably faster than the tendon. And yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me that would be what's going on. Maybe you could make a case for unloading. If you did a period of unloading, maybe there would be a change in tendon stiffness, but I think it's a bad change where if you look at some of these metabolic things, diabetes, like hyperglycemia, chronic hyperglycemia, high blood sugar, you have the collagen fibrils in your tendon, millions, trillions of collagen triple helix fibrils in your tendon, and they're cross-linked. So it's like a triple helix that's cross-linked that makes it stiffer. The cross-links make the tendon stiffer. And you can get good cross-links, just enzymatic cross-links that are normal. But then if you get chronic high blood sugar, you can get advanced glycation end product type cross-links, which are like more brittle. And I think that's what happens when you have periods of unloading, is you get more of these type of cross-links, which is going to make the tendon stiffer, but like not in a good way. This is my current. It's still kind of confusing for me, but maybe there is a side of tendon stiffness that's bad, because that's how you could get more tendon stiffness. But it's more like you got the tendon stiffness because your tendon's unhealthy. But again, that's a different case. We're not usually working with people who are chronically underloading and detraining, and you're having that impact. We're more talking about like athletes who are training, and it's like you're doing this training program. Be careful, you might get too stiff for your muscle. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah.
So in terms of training that stiffness, train that tendon, if stiffness is the route we want to go down, the end goal, in terms of methods to go about that, what's your thoughts?
Yeah. Okay. So how do you make the tendon stiffer so it doesn't deform as much when it's pulled on? So it kind of has a bigger safety factor where it doesn't have to extend too much. Yeah, how do you get it like that? The way I look at it, I think you need to look at maturity. Someone who's mature versus immature, and the cutoff is kind of 17 years old when you're about skeletally mature. So from 0 to 17, you're building your tendon. That's the time period when you're building everything in your body. You're building your bones, you're building your tendons, you're building your muscles, your ligaments. The thing we see though is like once you're 17, pretty much till the end of time, you can always build your muscle. Your tendon kind of has this point of like 0 to 17. That is when all the building is happening. And then you can build it a bit, but it's not going to have the same impact as like how you can grow a muscle. You can always grow muscles. You can always make muscles stronger. It's so sensitive though when you're a kid trying to grow your tendon. And I think in that age, it's just trillions of reps of whatever the kid wants to do. If they want to play basketball, you should be playing basketball all the time. You should be doing multiple sports. But that's what's going to build the tendon, is getting pulled on over and over for hours every day. It's giving the tendon cells a signal that they're getting pulled on in this linear fashion. The tendon cells kick out collagen. The collagen lays down in the tendon, and the collagen gets cross-linked. You're building your tendon by doing millions of reps of things, and then you could add in some lifting weights for kids, because that's good too. But I think when you're 0 to 17, it's just general good physical preparation, and that's what's going to build your tendon. There's some research on badminton players, and they have badminton and fencing, and they have a lead leg, so they have a leg that they want to stop with, and that tendon, I forget the age groups exactly, but it's somewhere, not in the States, somewhere where a country where they're like obsessed with these sports. That lead leg,
badminton and fencing, not huge sports in the US, I don't think.
No, not at all. But their lead leg, if it was their right leg that they're stopping with, that patellar tendon was 1.25 times bigger and stiffer than the other leg. And that's a good study, because you could look at cross-country runners versus rowers, and you're going to see cross-country runners have a thicker, bigger Achilles than the rowers. But it's like, well, did they just self-select that maybe you were born with a better Achilles, and that's why you're a runner, and your Achilles sucked, and that's why you went and did rowing? So like this study is really good, because it's the same subject, and it's like that tendon has adapted. That tendon didn't adapt from squats. It didn't adapt from plyometrics. It adapted because you did this specific activity for many years, and you were planting and shoving that knee forward, and the patellar tendon had to adapt versus the other one to get bigger and stiffer. So that's the way I look at tendon development and the stiffness development is what is the activity you want to do, pick that and do it for like a decade or 20 years. And that's how you're going to build the tendon, make the tendon stiff. I think later on in life, when you're mature and you're like reaching higher levels of performance, that's when you can start to say, how are we going to increase tendon stiffness further? Yeah, further. And I think you get it from lifting. I think you get tendon stiffness from heavy lifting, like up and down reps or heavy isometrics. I don't think you get tendon stiffness from plyometrics. And that's just because there's really no research on it. There's really no research on tendon stiffness gain from plyometrics. There could be problems with the plyometric protocols. They could be doing like, just think of regular research subjects doing plyometrics versus good athletes doing plyometrics. They probably maybe are just stupid plyometrics or they're poorly performed. But so I think recently Falk Mersman is one of the guys I heard, and he's teamed up in papers with, I think it's Stefan Bohm, or maybe it's not Stefan. And then there was another guy, Aaron Patsis, and they've done so many studies on gaining tendon stiffness. And their method is, they have I think they call it the Berlin method, of holding a very heavy, it's for patellar and Achilles, is holding a very heavy isometric that's like 90% MVC or higher, just for 3 seconds and then resting them at 3 seconds. So they do multiple sets of a 3-second hold. They'll do a leg extension, they'll do a seated calf raise, a standing calf raise, and they'll actually do ultrasound probe on the tendons and they'll see stiffness gain. But I had to go way back. I was trying to figure out why do they say you get tendon stiffness from this sustained contraction where there's a big pull with the muscle? Why do they say you get tendon stiffness there and you don't get it in plyometrics? And they were saying, I don't even think I could find this paper again. It was way back. But they were saying the mechanotransduction, because it's mechanotransduction of the tendon cells, that the tendon cells are kicking out collagen, they're cross-linking the collagen to make it stiffer. That's what you're doing when you get tendon stiffness, is it's coming from the tendon cells. But they're saying that the tendon cells need mechanotransduction for about 3 seconds, for like 1 to 3 seconds. And if you do a plyometric, it's going to be hundreds of milliseconds. It's too short. So their thing was it's too short to signal the tendon cells to make the tendon stiffer. It was only one paper, and I'm like, I need to talk to these guys to figure out, where did you get this from? I've tried asking others, and I've found no answers. I wonder if there's any correlation with that and muscle hypertrophy, because we don't see muscle hypertrophy from plyometrics either. You see muscle hypertrophy from something with the time under tension. With just like a 1, 2, 3 second time under tension, you can see muscle hypertrophy. So is there a similarity with muscle cells and tendon cells where they need a time frame to kick out this raw material? The parallels, maybe there is a parallel there. And hopefully I can get to the bottom of this, because it can really clear up this whole talk of, well, plyometrics should increase tendon stiffness, well, lifting increases. Like, I think lifting heavy weights, because it's a sustained time under tension, is increasing tendon stiffness, because the tendon stiffness comes from the collagen and the cross-linking of the collagen, which is coming from the cells, and maybe the cells need some time under tension. And I'm looking at this in mature people, because I think kids 0 to 17, you can increase tendon stiffness by just being a kid, by just being an athlete. But as you get older and you want to push tendon stiffness even higher, I think you need the sustained time under tension. Although that badminton and fencing study, they were 1.25 times stiffer there. Was it because they had done that sport a lot when they were 0 to 17? What if we took a group from 17 plus when they're already mature and they did that? Would they get a stiff? I bet you they still would get a stiffer, bigger tendon. I just think that that study's impossible. You got to take someone and have them train a certain way for 5 or 10 years to see the stiffness gain. Versus for us, it's like, if you could see a stiffness gain in 6 weeks by doing something super heavy, that's kind of like quote unquote unnatural. Then maybe that's what we should be after. But I think the foundation of everything is, what is the action you want? What is the action you want to do? The sporting action, and you should be doing that a ton. And that's going to build your tendon in the way you want to build it. And then you want to bolster tendon stiffness more. Lift heavy.
So where do isometrics fit into this? Do they fit into this?
Yeah, isometrics are the same. I look at isometrics as the same as lifting. The same thing as lifting. And I think all variety of isometrics, I think in the Falk Mersman type papers, they do 3 to 5 second isometrics. And you do such a short time because you can get a lot of muscle torque when you do a short period of time. If you talk about the Keith Barr stuff, like 30 to 45 second, or Ebony Rio, muscle torque is not going to be that high because you're getting fatigued. So it's almost like, I don't think that's as good at increasing tendon stiffness, the longer isometrics, because the muscle is just not able to pull on it. And when I talked about that whole thing of getting that mechanotransduction on the tendon cells, pulling on the tendon, what you're looking at is strain of the tendon. So your patellar tendon right now, you're sitting, so I guess it's the strain is the slack of the tendon is taken up a little bit. But if you straighten your knee with a relaxed quad, your tendon, it's like a slack line. It just is kind of hanging there, bent a little bit. The collagen fibrils will crimp up. If you want to get adaptation through the tendon, you have to strain it. So you have to pull it end to end. And there's so many numbers on it. It's like, is the healthy strain 4% strain of the tendon? Like you take the resting length of the tendon and you pull it only 4% of its resting length. Is that what you need to get the mechanotransduction through the cells? Some people can strain their tendons like 10%, 15, 20%. They can get huge excursions of their tendon. Those people probably need to hit those levels to get some mechanotransduction through their cells. But remind me again the question, because I went off a little bit.
No, I just said about isometrics, where they fit
isometrics. Yeah. Okay,
do.
so because you were saying, I want to clarify that it's like, I talked about the lifting, the slow, heavy lifting causing this mechanotransduction on the cells, and it's all you're really doing is straining the tendon, pulling on the tendon. And when you do heavy lifting, you're pulling on the tendon. When you do plyometrics, you're pulling on the tendon. The difference is the pull from lifting is a sustained thing. The pull from plyometrics is not a sustained thing. Isometrics are sustained just like lifting. The difference is the time frame. Like, if we took a 3-second isometric and you're doing it to like pretty much muscular failure, you're going to get a huge strain on the tendon. So those tendon cells, like, let's just throw a random number, 90% of the tendon cells are going to be stimulated to kick out collagen with that 3-second isometric. If you did a 30-second isometric, you're not going to get as much strain on the tendon. So how many tendon cells are you going to hit? Maybe like 50%. It's just me. This probably doesn't exist, but it helps my own understanding. So I think the really heavy stuff is going to get a big strain on the tendon, which is probably going to have more adaptation of the tendon. I think when you're talking about rehab, when you're talking about rehab of patellar and Achilles, I do not like 3-second isometrics. I think you're going to blow up a lot of tendons because that tendon does not want to be pulled on that far. And the tendon is so sensitive. The cells in the tendon, you have immune cells in your tendon too. You have probably fluid in your tendon. When you pull on the tendon too far, whether it's slow or fast, the likelihood that it's going to blow up and increase pain symptoms is pretty high. So the 30 to 45 second isometric when someone is rehabbing a tendon, it's just safe. It's just a safe thing to do. And if you look at someone rehabbing a tendon chronically, they've had this for a long period of time, they have deficits. And one of the big deficits is the muscle. The muscle gets smaller and it gets weaker. And it's like, we can get muscle adaptation with a 30 to 45 second hold. You can get it with the short ones too, but if the short ones are blowing up your tendon, why don't we just go to the higher end and lift a lighter weight, still get a muscle hit. But it's a pull that's going to be well received, more likely to be well received by your tendon. And I've also had people that are rehabbing a tendon and I give them a 45 second isometric and it blows up their tendon even worse. So there are people with very sensitive tendons, and I give that person a 2-minute. I say take the same exercise and do a 2-minute isometric to muscular failure, because now we can really fail the muscle, but the tendon strain is less. I think as you increase the time of the hold, the tendon strain is going to be less because the muscle isn't pulling as hard. And it's just going to be safer for someone with a very sensitive tendon. So, in the healthy tendons, chase tendon stiffness all you want. Do the heavy lifting, do the heavy isometrics. In the painful tendon, I don't think you should be chasing a quality like tendon stiffness. You should be chasing the pain going down and you addressing the deficits around the tendon, which is usually going to be muscle oriented.
With all that, in terms of adaptation, like you said, the sensitiveness, is there any differences between men and women, male and female?
Yeah, I mean, there was a recent paper with I think it was Jill Cook and Gerard McMahon. There were some other papers. It was male tendons are from Mars, female tendons are from Venus. It was a fun paper to read, and yeah, there's quite a few differences with male and female. I think generally, females just have a smaller and less stiff tendon, which goes along with their muscles. Their muscles are weaker. I don't know if they're smaller, but their muscles are just weaker than males. So it would make sense that their tendons would reflect the same thing. And then they also just get less tendon. They're very unlikely to get patellar tendinopathy. I would assume, I don't know the numbers on it, but I would assume they get less Achilles tendinopathy. There could be an impact with estrogen too, because, actually, I don't want to talk about that. I don't really understand that. The cross-linking of, it probably affects the stiffness. So the estrogen is having some impact on this enzyme, lysyl oxidase. It decreases it or does something where lysyl oxidase is what is cross-linking your collagen, and females having estrogen inhibits lysyl oxidase, so their tendons will be less stiff. But their tendons are less stiff. They're also smaller. They're just not as good at performance. So I think you're just going to get less tendon issues because you can't really use your tendon. It's the people that can use their tendon. It's the people so I had a meme of, I don't know if you've seen the Avengers. You've seen the Avengers when Thanos, or no?
I don't think I have.
Oh, okay.
Carry on though.
There's a Thanos has a glove and he has a bunch of stones and he snaps his finger, and he destroys all the stones. So he needs to use the stones to destroy the stones. He says it, and it's kind of a weird phrase. And I'm like, the people that destroy the tendons are the best users of their tendons. The highest jumpers destroy their patellars. The fastest sprinters destroy their Achilles. So it's like you use the tendon to destroy the tendon. And a female just can't use the tendon as well. A male can use the tendon very well, so they're more likely to destroy their tendon with tendinopathy or with tendon rupture. So yeah, I think the training though for male and female, I can't fathom how it should be any different. I think it's just like strength and conditioning for an athlete. You take them where they are and you try to get them to where they want to be. And I don't think they're really going to be differences. I don't think there are going to be differences male and female, even though the females are going to have a less stiff tendon, but that's not going to change your training intervention because you're going to get a more stiff tendon from getting a stronger muscle. You need a stronger muscle to get a more stiff tendon. And males are going to chase stronger muscles. Females are going to chase stronger muscles. We're going to do the same things. It's just the impact, the changes are probably going to be less with females than they are with males.
So I think Derek Hansen put an interesting graphic out, and he's probably revisited that a couple of times over the last few years with Achilles ruptures. What is it about the current methods of training that are the demands of the game potentially that's mean that the Achilles ruptures are going up?
Yeah, I did a podcast with him a year ago, yeah. And we need to do another one because we kind of ran out of time. But I still am questioning. I've tried going back in the research, and maybe he's better at finding these studies than I am. But I wanted to see the reports on Achilles ruptures, and it's National Football League. I guess that's where I get it from, American football. Yeah. And the reporting just seems bad in the past, 10 years ago, 20 years. Some of these you can't even find how many Achilles ruptures in a year. And I wonder if sometimes they hid them. I wonder because if you're an athlete, you rupture your Achilles, do you want that reported? Do you want someone to know and now you're going to lose millions of dollars? Or do you want to just hide out for a year? Maybe that was more likely 20 years ago than it is today. But yeah, it does seem like there's a lot more Achilles ruptures today than there were in the past. And we speculated. So we basically spent an hour or 90 minutes speculating on this, why this is the case. Is it something in the water? Is the training programs vastly different today than they were 20 years ago? Are we not doing enough calf raises? Were we doing calf raises back in the day? Is it that people are so much more powerful nowadays in their muscles, like their quads, hamstrings, glutes, that the lower leg has not had the ability to adapt? I don't know. Is it the shoes? Is it the changes in surfaces? Is it like in the Super Bowl with the 49ers? Was it last year or 2 years ago? I can't remember. They were practicing on a soft, wet field. This is what I remember. could be a little bit off. A soft, wet field all week. It wasn't good. And then I think they played on a field that was the stiffest, one of the stiffest in the NFL. So you're having this huge change in surface. And you saw an Achilles rupture. Greenlaw tore his Achilles. I guess a guy on the 49ers staff also tore his Achilles on the field, a non-athlete. You're just, maybe it's because everyone knows now that they happen, and once they happen, you're seeing them all over online. Like Aaron Rodgers did his, and you see tons of videos on that. I don't know. I still question if the numbers are accurate compared to what they were in the past. Why are they happening? I don't know. I really don't know. But I had a show with Jared Antflick. I don't know if you've ever had Jared on your show.
I haven't, but I know the name.
Okay, so I talked with him.
He's English. English dude. No.
Yeah, I think he's in London. No, I think he's from Australia actually.
Okay, but he lives in England. Yeah.
So there was this whole world of tendons that I didn't even know. Maybe this was 1.5 years ago. I was in Wisconsin, and I decided I'm gonna go on a trip around the States and go see people. And I met up. Corey Schlesinger was at UT Austin with men's basketball, and we talked about tendons a bit because Corey had tore his Achilles. He's with the Pistons now. Corey had tore his Achilles in the past. We talked about tendons for a bit, and he was like, "Dude, you need to meet up with Daniel Bove with the Pelicans, New Orleans Pelicans." And I was not familiar with Daniel, so I was on my way out there, so I hit him up, met up with him, and he was like, "We have a guy that comes in and scans all of our patella and Achilles every 6 weeks, I think." And they'd use the ultrasound, the UTC scanner. I think you've heard Seth O'Neill on your show talk about UTC scanner.
Yeah.
It's like an ultrasound on steroids where you can get a 3D view of the tendon, see the health of the tendon. So, Bove was kind of talking to me about that with Jared, that's the way to look at tendon health, is to see how healthy is the tendon. Is it mostly all well-aligned collagen, or are there pockets of degeneration? Are there pockets of more fluid? Is the tendon in a healing process, or is it like completely healthy? Do they have a partial tear in their tendon that they might not know about? So all these things. And his method to get the tendons healthier is just heavy lifting, high volume, heavy lifting. Heavy lifting, and then some like pump, like it's just a lot of work. If it's patellar tendon, you want to get that healthier, it is a ton of quad work. If it's Achilles tendon, it's a ton of calf work, and it's usually the slow sustained contractions. And he'll see tendons get healthier with that, and combined with taking away some of the sport loads, because you can't just keep blowing up the tendon with the fast stuff if it's compromised. So this is an idea that I think I've now had I've processed it now for 1.5 years, and I'm like, this has to be at the forefront of Achilles rupture prevention. Is you should be looking at the health of the tendon, because I don't know if there's been a documented case of a healthy tendon rupturing. Because when the tendon ruptures, the surgeon can go in and they'll look at the tendon and they'll see that it's been degenerative for a long period of time beforehand in different areas, even maybe a different area than the rupture spot. So all the tendons that are rupturing are degenerative, have tendinosis, problems with the tendon. The problem is a lot of them are silent. You don't even know that your tendon sucks because you're able to perform fine. You don't even know your tendon's compromised, and then you go out and rupture the thing. And I think it's at the forefront. I think in the first place, it's like, obviously, let's do really good strength and conditioning practices, good recovery timelines, try all the things that we know, good common sense. But I think you got $1 million athletes. Why are you not looking at the health of their tendon? Why are you not monitoring the health of their tendon? Because if they pop their Achilles and you're just like, oh, it happens, it came out of nowhere. It's like, well, that tendon could have had a serious problem and you didn't even know, because the body wasn't telling the person with pain. So I think that's probably the future. I want to buy a UTC scanner myself at some point, so I can start just scanning random people's tendons and seeing how they change. I think it would be really useful. But the whole thing, why are there more NFL Achilles ruptures? I don't know. I like the lockout. They had a NFL lockdown many years ago, 2010 maybe, where something happened with the money and the guys were just off. They, instead of having I think it was a few months. Instead of having a few months of off-season training, they only had 1 week where it was scheduled. So a lot of guys, you probably don't know what they were doing. And instead of having Like I think the average was, I forget the average. Let's say instead of an average of 6 Achilles ruptures in the year, I think they had like 12 or 13 in the first week. So it's like there's a period of offloading, potentially offloading, deloading, and then let's go play American football again and snap a bunch of Achilles go. So that's a thing. I mean, is it that you're going from, is it too much too soon? Like every musculoskeletal issue we have, is it just too much too soon? And that's how the Achilles are popping. I just don't know the answer. And until we start to look at the health of the tendon with UTC scanners, I don't know if we'll make any progress on this. It's just going to be discussions for hours that really get nowhere.
Amazing. Right. I've kept you for long enough. Firstly, because I was 15 minutes late, and then the additional 41 minutes that we've been chatting. But you have tons of stuff online. Where is the best place for people to follow you, understand more about your thoughts on this area and in any other area? Where's the best place, Jake?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much everything but TikTok. So Instagram, Jake Tuura, Tuura. I post a lot of things, sometimes just random tendon stuff I'm thinking of. And I got a podcast, Jacked Athlete Podcast. I've done a ton of tendon shows there, YouTube, Twitter. Yeah, those are all the spots.
Amazing. Well, I'm going to let you go so my coolness inferiority can disappear. But I appreciate you coming on, mate. Keep in touch. Love the stuff you put out. So, thank you very much again.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, buddy. Thanks, mate.